Prologue. Before the forest. There lived a beautiful young woman who never truly knew her worth. From the first breath she drew, the world tried to tell her she was less. Born with 2 right arms, a rare and wondrous mark that should have been a cause for celebration, she was instead hidden, whispered about, and treated as if she carried a curse. Her family kept her in shadow, a secret behind a back door, hoping that if they hid her long enough, the world would forget she existed. But destiny does not bend to fear, and the moon does not dim for anyone's shame. What they called a flaw was in truth a quiet brilliance, a strength waiting for its hour. Evil, after all, never lasts forever. The cruelty of small hearts burns out like a cold candle in the wind. This is Madison's story, the tale of a girl who would not remain a secret. From the dark corners of a village to the deep and untamed forest, from the pain of exile to the strength of love, she would discover her own beauty, her power, and the truth that no curse can hold back the light meant for her. And so her journey begins. Chapter 1. The Girl in the Back Room. The house always smelled faintly of lye soap and wood smoke, the kind of scent that clung to walls and memories alike. Madison spent most of her days behind the back door, where the stone floor stayed cool even in midsummer, and the windows were small enough to keep her hidden. Here, the world was quiet. Just the soft scrape of her broom, the low hum of her mother's voice in another room, and the distant laughter of village children she was never allowed to join. She had been born with 2 right arms, a twist of nature that the midwife whispered about before the cord was even cut. By the time she could walk, the whispers had hardened into superstition.
Cursed,
the neighbors said, crossing themselves when she passed.
a sign of bad harvests, of sickness.
Her parents did not speak such words aloud, but Madison felt their weight in every careful glance. When guests came, she stayed hidden in the back, her extra arm tucked beneath long sleeves. They loved her, she supposed, but love wrapped in fear is a thin blanket. She learned to be small, to move without sound, to stitch her own clothes so no one else would see. The back room became her world, a single narrow bed, a wooden chest with a loose hinge, and a small window that looked out on the endless green of the forest. Some evenings, she pressed her forehead to the glass, watching the treetops ripple like an ocean and wondering what life smelled like beyond the village smoke. Madison was 16 when she began sneaking out to the garden at night. She liked the hush after everyone slept, the way moonlight softened the sharp edges of everything. She would trace the garden's crooked rows, the cool soil sifting between her fingers, and breathe a little easier. Out here, the stars didn't care how many arms she had. Still, the village found ways to remind her she was different. A child's shout of "Witch girl!" as she passed on an errand. The baker's wife pulling her son a little closer when Madison came to buy flour. Each moment pressed like a stone into her chest until she carried a quiet mountain of them. The forest became her refuge. She started walking deeper, past the berry thickets and into the stands of oak and pine. There, no one stared. The trees whispered in a language older than any curse. Sometimes she would rest on a fallen log and close her eyes, letting the sounds of running water and wind in the branches wash her clean. Her parents noticed her absence but said nothing. Perhaps they thought the woods would tire her out, or perhaps they believed, like so many others, that the forest would swallow what the village feared. Years slipped by in a slow rhythm of chores and hidden wanderings. Madison grew taller, her hair long and dark like river silt, her hands, both of them, steady from work. She became a young woman almost without realizing it. The forest grew more familiar than the crooked lanes of the village. On the night everything began to shift, a storm gathered over the hills. Rain lashed the shutters, and the wind moaned through the chimney like a warning. Madison sat by the back window, a candle guttering beside her. The trees bent and swayed in the darkness, alive with restless motion. Something in that wildness called to her, a pull she couldn't name. She pressed her palm, both of them, to the cold glass. For the first time, the thought of leaving for good didn't feel like a dream. It felt like the beginning of a path she had been walking toward all her life. Chapter 2. The Banishment. The morning after the storm, the village square smelled of damp earth and smoke. The air held that strange stillness that comes after heavy rain, when every leaf drips quietly and the world waits for a decision. Madison stood in the doorway of the back room as the village bell clanged, calling everyone to gather. Her mother's face was pale. Her father's hands trembled as he adjusted his cloak.
"Stay inside,"
he told her, though his voice cracked on the words. But when the bell rang a second time, Madison knew there was no hiding. Not anymore. By the time she reached the square, the villagers had already formed a half circle around the council stone. Old men leaned on staffs. Women whispered behind their shawls. Children peered out wide-eyed. Madison felt every stare like a thorn. The council elder stepped forward, a heavy wooden staff in hand.
"The signs are clear,"
he said, his voice carrying in the damp air.
"The harvest is failing. Sickness creeps through the valley. The river floods when it should not. These are omens we cannot ignore."
Someone muttered her name. Someone else spat into the mud. The elder's gaze found her.
"The child born with 2 right arms,"
he continued.
"This is no ordinary deformity. It is a mark, a curse. The forest has claimed her, and to the forest she must return."
Her mother flinched. Her father opened his mouth, then shut it again. No one spoke in her defense. Madison felt the ground tilt under her feet. She thought of the quiet back room, of nights spent tracing the forest line with her eyes. Perhaps, she thought with a strange calm, the forest had always been waiting.
"You will leave by nightfall,"
the elder said.
"Food enough for 3 days. Beyond the river, the woods will provide, or they will not. This is the will of the council and of the spirits that guide us."
The bell tolled once more. The crowd began to scatter, their duty done. Only her parents lingered, eyes full of things they could not say. Her mother reached for her, then let her hands fall. By sunset, Madison had packed what little she owned, a blanket, a knife, a handful of seeds. She wrapped both arms tightly beneath her cloak. As the last light faded, she stepped beyond the village path and into the forest waiting dark. The night smelled of pine and rain. Each step away from the village felt oddly certain, as if she had rehearsed this all her life. The forest swallowed her whole, and the world she left behind grew small and silent. Far to the north, a wolf howled, a sound deep and lonely enough to shiver the stars. Madison paused, heart quickening. She did not know it yet, but that call belonged to someone who would change everything. Chapter 3. Life in the Forest. Madison woke each morning to a gray hush of mist and birdsong. The forest became her home in ways she could not have imagined while standing in the village square, waiting for judgment. At first, the silence pressed on her like a weight, but slowly she began to learn the rhythms of this new life. She built her shelter from fallen branches and stones near a clear-running brook. The brook became her lifeline. She drank its cold water, washed her face in it, and used it to clean the few clothes she owned. Bathing meant stepping into the icy current at dawn, teeth chattering until the shock became routine. The cold sharpened her senses and left her feeling alive, almost reborn each time. For food, she set snares of twisted vine and scavenged wild edibles. At first, she survived on berries, nuts, and the stubborn carrots and herbs she had carried from her mother's garden. Over time, she learned to read the forest signs, where mushrooms grew rich in shadow, how to catch a rabbit without frightening it, which roots could be roasted into something filling. The first night she cooked rabbit over a small fire, the smell alone nearly brought tears. Her days were built from simple tasks: gathering firewood, mending her cloak with strips of bark fiber, tending a small garden patch she carved from a sunlit clearing, planting seeds with the same care she once reserved for dreams. At night, she listened to the forest breathe, owls calling, branches creaking, wolves singing far off. Loneliness was her constant companion. Some evenings she whispered aloud just to hear a human voice, even if it was only her own. Memories of her family and the narrow back room came unbidden. The sound of her mother's footsteps, the low rumble of her father's laugh. Sometimes the ache of missing them was sharper than hunger. Yet the forest did not let her stay broken. The quiet taught her patience. The daily work taught her strength. She grew lean and sure-footed. Her extra arm, once a mark of shame, became a hidden advantage when carrying heavy bundles or setting traps. Out here, no one called her cursed. Out here, she simply was. As the seasons shifted, Madison found a strange peace. The forest accepted her without question, and with each passing day, she felt less like an exile and more like something the woods themselves had chosen to keep. Chapter 4. The Alpha in the Shadows. Far beyond Madison's hidden clearing, the moon hung pale over the stone towers of Blackridge Keep. Inside the great hall, torches smoked and voices droned on like restless bees. Cole sat at the council table, jaw tight, listening to the elders debate alliances and bloodlines. They spoke of duty and heirs, of binding treaties with distant pacts through marriage. None of it stirred him. For months he had endured their endless talk of mating contracts. Mothers paraded their daughters before him as if he were a prize to be claimed. Every banquet ended the same. Forced smiles, sidelong glances, whispered gossip about why the Alpha of Blackridge still refused to choose a mate. Some hinted at weakness, others, rebellion. Cole felt only weariness. He had fought hard to lead his people through bitter winters and border skirmishes. He had hunted for them, bled for them. But the council cared only for lineage and power, as if love were a trivial thing. The walls of the keep, once symbols of his strength, now pressed on him like a cage. When night finally fell, he left without ceremony. The guard at the gate bowed, surprised but silent, as Cole swung into the saddle and urged his black horse toward the forest. He carried only his bow and a hunting knife. No entourage, no hounds, just the quiet hunger for solitude. The forest greeted him with a hush that felt like mercy. Here the air smelled of wet pine and earth, not smoke and ambition. He dismounted beneath an ancient oak and let his wolf senses unfurl. Every sound sharpened, the rush of a distant stream, the heartbeat of small animals in the brush. Out here, he was not a prince or a council's reluctant pawn. He was simply Cole, wolf and man in one skin. For 3 days he roamed deeper, sleeping beneath tangled boughs, eating what he hunted. Each step carried him farther from the council's demands and closer to a quiet he hadn't known since childhood. Yet even in this vast silence, a restlessness followed him. Something in the wind felt different, charged, as if the forest itself held a secret meant for him alone. One evening, as dusk bled into the trees, he paused beside a brook to drink. That's when he caught it, a scent unlike deer or fox, faint but unmistakably human. It threaded through the air with a pull that made his wolf rise within him. Not fear, something deeper, like recognition. Cole straightened, heart quickening. Somewhere in this endless wilderness, someone else was living, hidden, and without understanding why, he knew his wandering was no longer aimless. Chapter 5. When Paths Cross. The late summer dusk draped the forest in honeyed light. Madison sat beside her small fire, turning a strip of rabbit meat on a sharpened branch. The scent of pine smoke and wild thyme wrapped around her like a blanket. This was the hour she liked best, when the day's labor was done and the woods seemed to breathe with her. Alone, but steady. Alone, but safe. She had long ago stopped expecting company. Years of silence had taught her that love, marriage, even friendship were things for other people. The villager's judgment still echoed faintly in her memory. Cursed, unfit, better gone. She had grown into her exile like a tree growing around stone, strong but solitary. A sudden rustle broke the rhythm of crackling fire, too heavy for a rabbit, too measured for wind. Madison's hand closed instinctively around the handle of her knife as she rose. From between two dark pines, a figure stepped into the clearing. Tall, broad-shouldered, his cloak damp with evening mist. For a breathless moment, the world narrowed to the sound of the brook and the thud of her heart.
I mean no harm.
He said, his voice deep and rough-edged.
I've been hunting.
Madison stayed still, knife low but ready.
Hunters don't come this far.
Her words were quiet, but steady.
I needed to.
He replied, eyes steady on hers.
The woods call to me when the rest of life presses too hard.
The way he said it, without pity, without curiosity, made something inside her shift. He didn't glance at the shape of her cloak, didn't search for the difference others had always stared at. He simply looked at her. Cole eased closer, careful, as though he sensed the years of weariness coiled inside her. The firelight revealed a face lined not with age but with burden, a man carrying something heavy and silent.
Do you live here alone?
He asked at last. Madison hesitated. The truth was a raw thing.
Yes.
And yet you've made a life.
He said, a trace of admiration in his tone.
That is no small feat.
They spoke little more that evening. Cole lingered near the edge of her firelight, never crossing into her space, while Madison tended the rabbit and listened. His presence felt steady. Not an intrusion, but a quiet fact, like the brook or the stars overhead. When he finally rose to leave, he inclined his head in a gesture almost courtly.
Thank you for the warmth of your fire,
he said.
May I come again tomorrow? I've not known such peace in many seasons.
Madison surprised herself with a small nod. After he disappeared into the dark, she sat long by the dying embers, heart beating with a new and unfamiliar rhythm. For the first time since her banishment, she did not feel fated to be alone. Something had shifted in the forest's endless silence. Someone had found her. Chapter 6. Embers of Trust. The next evening, Madison listened for him long before he arrived. The forest had its own music, wind-threading needles of pine, the chatter of night birds. But now she could tell when another sound joined it, the soft crunch of deliberate footsteps, a measured breath. Cole emerged from the trees with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged to the wild. He carried a small bundle of venison wrapped in leaves.
A gift,
He said simply.
if you'll allow me to share your fire.
Madison nodded and moved aside to make space. The firelight flickered between them, drawing shadows across his sharp features. He sat without ceremony, his cloak brushing the moss. For a while they said nothing, the quiet stretching comfortably like an old quilt. When he finally spoke, it was not with idle chatter, but with something weightier.
Life inside the keep,
He paused, searching for words.
it is heavy. Endless counsels, endless demands. I needed air that wasn't thick with expectation.
Madison stirred the embers, her own memories stirring with them.
The village was no different for me.
She said softly.
They wanted me gone. so I left before they could decide twice.
Cole turned toward her, eyes catching the fire's glow.
They feared what they didn't understand.
She gave a half smile, brittle at the edges.
That's the story of my life.
He didn't offer pity, only quiet respect,
Then we are both outcasts.
he said.
But perhaps that means we see things others cannot.
The words settled between them like a vow neither of them meant to speak aloud. Over the next nights, their meetings grew into a gentle rhythm. Cole would arrive with something hunted, wild herbs, a brace of quail, a pouch of berries, and Madison would share her fire and her quiet company. They spoke of small things at first, the ways clouds predict a storm, how a wolf can track a deer through 3 days of rain. Slowly, the edges of deeper truths emerged. Cole spoke of a council obsessed with alliances and bloodlines, of the mothers who pushed their daughters toward him with hopeful eyes. Madison listened, imagining stone walls and torchlight, a world as foreign as the stars overhead. In turn, she shared pieces of her own story, the nights in the back room, the hush of exile, the long, hard lessons of survival. She never once pulled back her cloak to reveal the secret of her second right arm, but she noticed that Cole never asked. His gaze remained steady, as if he already knew that her worth lay far beyond what the village had judged. Some nights they simply sat together in silence, the forest a vast cathedral of shadows and moonlight. Madison felt the distance between them narrow, not with sudden sparks, but with the slow, patient warmth of trust. She caught herself wondering what it would be like to reach out, to touch his hand, to let someone else's heartbeat echo against her own. Then she would glance at the cloak covering the arm she had hidden her whole life and remind herself to be careful. Yet something inside her had already begun to thaw. In the quiet hours after he left, she lay awake listening to the brook and the memory of his voice. For the first time since her banishment, the forest no longer felt like the end of her story. It felt like the beginning. Chapter 7. A gentle warming. Days folded into weeks, and the forest began to recognize the shape of their meetings. The mossy clearing where Madison's fire burned seemed to expect Cole now, branches leaning just so, the brook singing a softer song. Even the foxes kept a respectful distance when he arrived. One cool evening, he brought wild honey wrapped in birch bark.
Found it near the eastern ridge.
He said, offering it as if it were treasure. Madison's eyes widened at the golden sweetness. She had not tasted honey since leaving the village. They ate in companionable quiet, letting the delicate sugar melt on their tongues while the sun sank behind dark pines. The conversation that followed felt different, slower, edged with something unspoken. Cole stretched his legs toward the fire.
When I was younger,
He began.
I thought leadership meant force. The stronger the alpha, the safer the pack. But the council's endless scheming.
He exhaled, the sound heavy with weariness.
Strength is not what they think it is. I wonder sometimes if I was chosen for a task I do not believe in.
Madison watched the flames catch in his gray eyes.
Maybe the task chose you because you see differently. Perhaps that's the strength they can't name.
A quiet settled between them, full but not awkward. Cole looked at her then. Not at her hidden arms, not at the small hut she had built, but at her, as if the long years she'd spent surviving alone were written in light across her face. He reached out, not to touch, but to let his hand hover near hers.
You live here with such courage.
He said softly.
I cannot help but wonder what you left behind to build all this.
Madison hesitated, heart quickening. The words were hard and precious.
I left a life where I was never enough, where I was always a shadow in a back room.
His gaze did not flinch.
They were blind.
The fire popped, sending a brief shower of sparks upward. Madison felt something inside her, a wall built from years of exile, begin to crack. She could almost believe that the forest had not condemned her, but prepared her for this meeting. When Cole finally rose to leave, he did not bow or speak a grand farewell. Instead, he said quietly,
Tomorrow, I will bring seeds from the valley. Perhaps we can plant something together.
Madison felt the warmth of the fire sink deeper into her chest. After he disappeared into the dark, she sat for a long time beneath the rising moon, letting the thought take root. She had once believed she would live and die alone, but with every evening spent beside Cole, the forest itself seemed to whisper otherwise. Chapter 8. Out of the Forest. Autumn laid its first copper leaves over the forest floor when Cole finally spoke of leaving. He arrived one evening with a different air, still gentle, but weighted with decision.
The council grows impatient.
He said as they walked the edge of the brook.
They demand an answer about alliances and heirs. I have delayed as long as I can.
Madison's heart tightened. She had known this peace could not last forever, but the thought of returning to any world beyond the trees filled her with unease.
You have a duty,
she said carefully. He stopped, turning to face her fully.
Yes, but duty does not mean surrendering my heart.
A faint smile softened his words.
I will not return alone, Madison. I want them to know you, as my Luna.
The forest seemed to still around them. Madison felt the weight of years spent believing she was destined for solitude. The word Luna carried power, a partner, an equal, the heartbeat beside an alpha. Could such a place truly be meant for her?
What will they say,
She whispered.
when they see me?
Cole stepped closer until his breath mingled with hers.
They will see strength. They will see the woman who built a life from exile. And if they cannot see that, it will not matter. I have chosen.
He reached for her hand, not to pull, but to invite. Madison's heart pounded as she slipped her fingers into his. For the first time, she let her cloak fall slightly back. The firelight caught the outline of both right arms. Cole's gaze didn't waver. If anything, it deepened with quiet admiration. By dawn, they began their journey. The forest, once her only world, now felt like a blessing sending her forth. They crossed silver streams and winding deer paths, emerging at last where rolling hills met the stone ramparts of Black Ridge Keep. The council chamber smelled of burning cedar and candle wax when Cole led her inside. Voices fell silent. Elders straightened, eyes widening at the sight of the woman beside their alpha. Whispers stirred like dry leaves. Cole's voice cut through them, calm but unyielding.
This is Madison. She is my chosen mate and your Luna.
The room held its breath. Some counselors exchanged quick, uneasy glances. A few shifted as if to object, but Cole's steady gaze silenced them before a word could rise. His authority as alpha was absolute. His choice, final. Madison stood tall, the years of forest solitude steadying her spine. She no longer felt the need to hide the arm she once believed a curse. Instead, she let the cloak hang loose, meeting the council's stares with quiet strength. In that charged silence, the truth settled over the hall like moonlight. A woman once cast out as cursed now entered as queen of the very world that had rejected her kind. The council elder, who had known Cole since boyhood, finally inclined his head.
Then the will of the Alpha is the will of the pack,
He said slowly.
Welcome, Luna Madison.
A ripple of acknowledgement moved through the chamber. Cole's hand found hers, warm and sure. Madison felt the weight of her old life lift like mist burned away by morning sun. From the shadowed back room of her childhood to the wild heart of the forest, every lonely step had been leading here, to this moment of quiet triumph and new beginning. Chapter 9. Luna of Black Ridge. The keep's bells tolled a slow, ceremonial rhythm as word of the new Luna spread through Blackridge. By mid-morning, the stone courtyard filled with pack members, hunters, weavers, blacksmiths, elders. Curious faces turned toward the great hall, where Cole and Madison now stood side by side. Madison felt the vast space press in with murmurs and rustling cloaks. Yet she held herself steady, every lesson from the forest alive inside her. Breathe like the pines, stand like the mountains. The air was rich with wood smoke and expectation. Cole's voice carried easily over the crowd.
Today I bring before you Madison,
He declared.
She is no stranger to strength. She has endured exile and built a life where others would have withered. She is my chosen mate and the Luna of this pack.
For a heartbeat there was only silence. Then an elder woman with silvered hair stepped forward, bowing low.
If she is the Alpha's heart,
The woman said clearly.
then she is ours as well.
One by one others followed, until the hall filled with the sound of bows and murmured welcomes. Madison let the cloak slip back from her shoulders, revealing both arms without fear. A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd, but no gasp of rejection followed. Instead, the elder woman's eyes softened.
The moon gives gifts in many forms.
She said.
We are honored.
Relief came to Madison not as a rush, but as a quiet warmth, the same steady courage that had carried her through lonely winters. She met their gazes and spoke at last, her voice clear and calm.
I once believed I was meant to live unseen,
She said.
but the forest taught me that what is called a curse can be the very thing that keeps you alive. I come not only as Luna to Cole, but as one of you, ready to guard, to guide, and to grow with this pack.
A cheer rose, low at first, and then swelling until the stone walls trembled. Wolves tilted their heads and howled in unison, a sound that shivered with welcome and old magic. Cole stepped closer, placing a hand at the small of her back.
Our Luna,
He said simply, and the pack repeated it, first as a murmur, then as a chant. Our Luna, our Luna. In that moment, Madison felt the final weight of exile fall away. The girl hidden in a back room, the woman who survived on berries and solitude, was gone. In her place stood a Luna whose courage had been forged in silence and shaped by the wild. That night, the keep blazed with torches and feasting. A music threaded through the courtyard as wolves and humans alike celebrated under a rising moon. Madison stood at the high balcony beside Cole, the wind lifting her dark hair like a banner. The forest stretched beyond the walls, vast and silvered, no longer a place of banishment, but of beginnings. Cole leaned close, his voice for her alone.
everything that brought you here
He whispered.
was never meant to break you. It was meant to lead you home.
For the first time in her life, Madison believed it. She was no longer the hidden girl or the solitary woman of the woods. She was Luna of Blackridge, chosen, cherished, and free. Chapter 10. A Life Rewritten. The celebration lingered deep into the night, music echoing through every corridor of Blackridge Keep. Madison stood at the balcony's edge, the cold stone beneath her palms a reminder of how far she had come. Below, torches flickered like fallen stars, and wolves howled in time with drums. For a long moment she simply breathed, tasting the crisp mountain air. She remembered the back room where she once pressed her forehead to a small window, wondering if life beyond the village smoke would ever be hers. Now she stood high above a gathered pack that called her Luna. The journey felt unreal and inevitable all at once. Cole joined her, his presence a quiet warmth at her side. He rested a hand lightly on her shoulder.
The council is settled.
He said, a trace of wonder in his voice.
They accept you. More than that, they respect you. I have not seen them bow so quickly to anyone.
Madison allowed a small, private smile.
Perhaps they recognize strength when they see it, even if it doesn't look the way they expect.
Cole turned to face her fully, gray eyes softened by moonlight.
They will learn from you, as I have. What you built in the forest was more than survival. It was leadership. The pack needs that wisdom.
The words filled her with a warmth she hadn't known she craved. For years, she'd been told she was a mistake to hide. Now the very qualities born of exile, resilience, patience, quiet strength, were celebrated as gifts. As the night deepened, they walked the keep's outer walls together. The forest stretched beyond, dark and familiar. Madison's heart tugged toward it.
I don't want to leave it behind.
She admitted. Cole shook his head.
You won't. The forest is part of us now. We will keep it wild and sacred. It will always be our refuge.
He stopped and gently took both of her hands, letting the moonlight reveal what she had once hidden.
You were never cursed, Madison. The forest was preparing you for this, for me, for the pack.
Tears prickled, but did not fall.
I thought I would die alone,
She whispered.
And I thought duty meant surrender.
He answered.
We were both wrong. We were both waiting for each other.
The quiet between them was rich, alive with the pulse of something permanent. He lowered his forehead to hers, a gesture of bond and promise. Below, the pack's song rose again, a powerful, layered harmony that spoke of unity and beginning. Madison felt the music in her bones. She no longer feared the council's judgment, nor the villagers' old whispers. Those voices had no claim on her future. Together they returned to the great hall where a feast waited. Wild game, fresh bread, honey mead, food and drink shared in her honor. Children ran laughing between tables, elders raised cups in blessing, and the sound of acceptance swelled around them. Later, when the last fire dimmed and the keep lay quiet, Cole led her through a moonlit courtyard to the garden where the first snowdrops pushed through cold soil.
Here.
He said softly, pressing a packet of seeds into her hand.
Plant with me tomorrow. Let's root our life where everyone can see what love can grow.
Madison closed her fingers around the seeds. The forest would always be part of her, but this garden, this life, was her next wild place to nurture. From a hidden back room to the throne beside an alpha, her story had been rewritten. Not by chance, but by every step of survival, every lonely winter, every choice to keep going. Beneath a silver moon, Madison finally understood. She had never been banished at all. She had been guided, straight to the heart, meant to meet her own. Chapter 11. Shadows at the Gate, The Bells of Blackridge Keep. Told again a week later, calling the pack and visiting villagers to the grand courtyard for the Luna's first public blessing. From every corner of the valley, people arrived. Farmers and hunters, elders and children, curious travelers, eager to glimpse the woman who had risen from exile to rule beside the Alpha. Among the gathering crowd stood faces Madison never expected to see again. Her parents, flanked by the neighbors who had once whispered cursed and witch girl behind drawn curtains. Their eyes darted from the soaring stone towers to the finely dressed wolves and humans who greeted Madison with respect. Bitterness sharpened their features like cold iron. They had come, it seemed, not to celebrate, but to witness, perhaps even to search for cracks in her triumph. The great hall doors opened, and Madison stepped out beside Cole, a crown of winter roses resting lightly on her dark hair. The pack cheered, the sound rolling like thunder through the courtyard. Cole announced her as Luna of Blackridge, his voice carrying the weight of an unbreakable vow. From the edge of the crowd, Madison's mother clutched her shawl tight, eyes narrowed with something that flickered between regret and envy. Her father's jaw tightened, lips pressed thin. The neighbors exchanged uneasy glances, whispers clinging like smoke. Madison met their stares and felt no tremor of the old fear. Instead, she felt the forest's quiet strength inside her, the memory of cold streams and long nights that had built her courage. She let the cloak fall back, showing the arms they once declared a curse. Gasps rippled through the onlookers, but no one recoiled. Instead, the pack howled in fierce approval, their voices drowning out any hiss of scorn. Cole placed his hand at the small of her back and spoke for all to hear.
Evil never lasts forever.
He said, his words rich and unshakable.
Cruelty withers when truth stands in the light.
The sentence rang like poetry in the clear mountain air. Evil doesn't last forever. It cannot outlive love. Her parents' faces hardened, but they said nothing. Perhaps they understood that their silence all those years ago had led to this very reckoning. Madison let her voice rise, calm but commanding.
You once tried to hide me away,
She said, her gaze sweeping over them.
but the forest taught me a truth you could not see, that what is meant to grow will find the sun. No wall of fear, no whispered curse can stop it.
The pack cheered again, a chorus of acceptance so loud the stone walls seemed to vibrate. Children danced, elders lifted their hands in blessing. In that swell of voices, the bitterness of the past shrank to a shadow. Her family remained on the courtyard's edge, small and silent. They had wanted her forgotten. Now they were forced to watch as she stood crowned and celebrated, the Luna of a powerful pack, the equal of an alpha. Cole turned to her, pride clear in his eyes.
Your life is proof that no darkness can hold forever.
He said quietly, for her alone.
You are the forest's own victory.
Madison looked once more at the family who had tried to bury her in silence and fear. They were part of her story, but they no longer held its ending. The forest had prepared her for more than survival. It had prepared her for sovereignty. Above them, the moon rose clean and full, casting silver over the keep. Madison lifted her chin, letting its light crown her again. The girl hidden in a back room was gone. Before the gathered world, she stood unshaken, a Luna, a queen in all but name, and living proof that evil's reign is always brief when met with truth and unyielding courage. Chapter 12. The Last Outcry. The night air inside Blackridge's great courtyard pulsed with firelight and the low thrum of drums. Madison and Cole stood side by side on the high stone steps, the pack gathered below in a ring of silver and gold. Their celebration of the new Luna had become a festival that seemed it would never end. Then a single voice cracked through the music like a splintering branch.
She's cursed.
The shout ripped across the courtyard. The drums faltered. The wolves' howls fell to silence. Madison turned slowly. At the edge of the crowd, her uncle, broad-shouldered, face red with drink and long-nursed resentment, pushed forward. His eyes burned with the same fury she remembered from childhood whispers behind the back door.
You think the spirits forget?
He snarled, pointing a shaking finger.
2 right arms. An omen of plague. We tried to warn you. You let her in, and she will doom you all.
Gasps rippled outward. Children clutched their mothers. A few villagers murmured nervously, old superstitions rising like smoke. Before Madison could speak, the council elder stepped forward, staff striking the stone with a crack that echoed like thunder.
Enough.
He said, his voice cold and sharp.
This is Blackridge, not a market of fear. Our Alpha has spoken. Our Luna is chosen. No curse can stand against the will of the moon and the strength of this pack.
The uncle sneered, refusing to back down.
You're blind. She will bring ruin.
A growl rolled through the courtyard, low and unmistakable. Cole stepped down from the dais, his wolf rising beneath his skin. The crowd instinctively parted as he advanced, eyes flashing like stormlight.
You will not speak that name, cursed, in my house.
Cole said, each word edged with power.
Madison is Luna of Blackridge. Her courage outshines every lie you carry. If you cannot honor that, leave these walls and do not return.
The uncle's voice broke in a strangled shout, but the sound was lost beneath a sudden chorus of howls. One by one, wolves tilted their heads to the moon, their call a single unbreakable wall of defiance. The very stones of the keep seemed to vibrate with their loyalty. Madison stepped forward then, her cloak falling open to reveal both arms. The firelight gilded her skin like armor.
I lived in silence while you whispered,
She said, her voice steady and carrying.
but the forest taught me this. Evil and envy burn out like dry leaves. Only truth endures.
A hush followed, deep and absolute. Even her uncle faltered, his fury shrinking under the weight of her calm. Cole turned slightly, his hand a warm anchor on Madison's back.
Leave.
He commanded.
The moon sees what you hide in your heart. You will not poison this pack with your fear.
The uncle's shoulders sagged as the crowd shifted, eyes hard with judgment. No one moved to defend him. With a final bitter curse under his breath, he backed away, swallowed by the dark beyond the gates. The courtyard exhaled as if a storm had passed. Wolves lifted their voices again, this time a jubilant song that swept away every trace of the outburst. Children laughed nervously, then joined in, their high notes ringing like bells. Madison remained where she was, the moonlight spilling over her as if to seal the moment. She felt no anger, only a deep certainty that the forest lessons were true. Evil's reign is always brief. Fear cannot outlive love and truth. Cole's quiet words reached her like a promise.
No shadow can touch what we have built.
The pack howled once more, a fierce, unified roar that carried to the farthest hills. And in that sound, Madison heard the final closing of an old life, the last echo of a curse that had never truly belonged to her, fall silent forever. Chapter 13. The Moonlit Triumph. Dawn broke over Blackridge Keep in a sweep of silver and rose, the kind of morning that felt carved from promise itself. The courtyard still held the scent of last night's fire and the faint echo of the pack's victorious howls. Madison stepped onto the balcony beside Cole, the mountain air cool against her skin. Below, the valley stretched awake, its mist lifting like a veil. The previous night's confrontation already felt like a distant storm. Her uncle's rage, the cruel accusation of cursed, had been swallowed whole by the pack's unwavering loyalty. What once would have crushed her had only strengthened her resolve. The villagers who once turned away now looked at her with something closer to awe than fear. She gazed at the forest beyond the walls, remembering the girl who once crouched in a back room, believing the world would never accept her. Every mile she'd walked, every winter she'd endured alone, had prepared her for this quiet victory. Cole joined her, draping a warm cloak over her shoulders.
The council meets at midday.
He said softly.
Not to question, but to honor you. They want your voice in every decision that shapes the pack's future.
Madison's heart steadied with a deep, quiet pride.
Then the forest brought me here for more than survival,
She murmured.
It brought me here to lead.
Cole smiled, a slow, certain curve.
It always knew where you belonged. So did I.
Below them, villagers and pack members began to gather, not for judgment, but for celebration. Children ran across the stones, laughing freely. Elders brought baskets of bread and honey. The same courtyard where her uncle had tried to stain her name now bloomed with acceptance. Madison let the morning sun touch her uncovered arms. No longer hidden, no longer a secret. She was the Luna of Blackridge. chosen, honored, and free. As the council bells rang, she and Cole descended the stone steps to meet their people. Hands reached out in greeting, voices lifted in welcome. Where there had been suspicion, there was now only devotion. Cole turned to her in the brightening light, his voice carrying over the courtyard.
The night has ended.
He said, words strong as the rising sun.
Fear has no place here. Our Luna stands as proof that love and truth outlast every shadow.
The crowd answered with a roar of joy, wolves raising their heads to the sky until the mountains themselves seemed to sing. Madison felt the sound inside her chest like a heartbeat shared by hundreds. She looked once more toward the gates where her family had disappeared, their bitterness trailing into silence. Their attempt to shame her had failed completely. Evil had burned out like a candle in the wind. Taking Cole's hand, Madison stepped forward to greet the day as Luna and queen in all but name. The forest that once cradled her solitude now crowned her triumph. Her life was no longer a story of exile, but of transformation, a living truth that evil never lasts forever, and love endures beyond every whispered curse. Chapter 14. The Everlasting Light. The days that followed unfurled like a blessing. Black Ridge Keep thrummed with a calm strength, every hall and courtyard alive with the scent of cedar smoke and early winter herbs. Word of Madison's courage traveled beyond the mountains, carried by merchants, hunters, and wandering bards, until distant packs spoke her name with admiration. The villagers who had once cast her out sent hesitant messengers bearing gifts of grain and wool. Their letters, heavy with late-blooming respect, arrived tied in humble twine. Madison accepted each one with quiet grace, neither gloating nor forgetting. The forest had taught her that dignity was not revenge. It was rising so high that bitterness could not reach. Cole watched with pride as she settled into leadership. Together, they walked the moonlit battlements, discussing harvest plans and border treaties. The council sought her counsel on disputes, and her decisions, measured, clear, and shaped by years of survival, earned swift loyalty. What she had once hidden had become her strength, the patience of solitude, the keen eye for detail, the unshakable will to endure. At night they often returned to the forest, their secret refuge. Beneath ancient pines, Madison knelt beside the brook where she had once bathed in lonely silence. Now the same water mirrored two faces side by side.
I used to think this place was a cage,
She said one evening, her voice soft beneath the stars.
but it was a forge. Every cold dawn, every quiet meal was shaping me for this life.
Cole brushed a hand over her hair, his gray eyes steady in the moonlight.
And every hunt that pulled me here was leading me to you. The spirits knew long before we did.
They stayed until the moon rode high, the forest alive with small, gentle sounds. The place that had once been a sentence of exile had become a holy ground where their bond was renewed. When winter finally arrived, the first snow fell in slow, glowing flakes. The keep glittered like a palace of silver and quiet strength. On the longest night of the year, the pack gathered in the courtyard to honor the Luna who had turned banishment into destiny. Fires roared, wolves sang, and children danced until their laughter joined the stars. Madison stood before them in a gown of deep forest green, a crown of woven silver birch resting on her dark hair. She looked out over the sea of faces, villagers, council members, children born since her return, and felt a peace deeper than any solitude she had ever known. Cole stepped forward, taking her hands in his.
From the shadows of exile,
He said, his voice ringing like a vow.
you became the light of this pack. Evil tried to bury you, but love and truth have outlived every curse. Tonight we honor not only a Luna, but the living proof that darkness cannot keep what destiny has claimed.
The courtyard erupted in cheers and howls that shook the night sky. Madison's heart swelled, every beat a testament to a life no one had believed possible. She looked up at the bright, watchful moon and let the moment settle like a promise. Evil never lasts forever. Love and courage endure beyond every shadow. With Cole's hand in hers and the pack's song rising around them, Madison knew the path that began in a hidden back room and wound through lonely forest had finally reached its true horizon, an everlasting light no darkness could touch. Chapter 15. The Legacy of the Luna. Spring came to Blackridge in a burst of soft rain and wildflower bloom. The mountain slopes glowed green, and the river below the keep ran fast with melted snow. Madison walked the outer gardens at dawn, the air rich with new life. Birds nested in the eaves, and children played beneath the apple trees she and Cole had planted from those first forest seeds. Everywhere she looked, she saw signs of renewal that felt almost miraculous. Where suspicion had once lingered, trust now flourished. Villagers who had once avoided her now greeted her with warmth, eager to share stories or seek her advice. Council meetings opened with deference to her judgment, and the younger wolves treated her like a teacher as much as a queen. Cole often joined her on these morning walks, their quiet steps tracing a partnership deeper than title. He watched with quiet pride as she moved among the people, a steady force who had turned exile into wisdom and old pain into a kind of quiet authority. One evening, as twilight spilled lavender light across the keep, the council held a feast in their honor. Long tables filled the courtyard, heavy with roasted game, honeyed bread, and early fruits. Torches flared, casting gold across the stone walls. As the meal drew to a close, the eldest counselor rose, staff in hand.
Tonight we honor the strength that has shaped Blackridge's future,
He declared, his voice carrying into the starry dark.
Our Luna, once hidden and scorned, has become the heart of this pack. Her courage proves that what is called cursed can, in truth, be a blessing. Her story will guide generations to come.
The pack answered, with a thunder of howls and applause. Children climbed onto benches to see better, their eyes bright with wonder. Madison felt the sound vibrate through her chest, a living music of belonging. She stood and let her gaze sweep the crowd.
There was a time when I believed my life would end in silence.
She began, her voice steady and warm.
But the forest taught me to endure. Each season of loneliness was not a punishment, but a preparation. Evil never lasts forever. Truth and love endure beyond every shadow.
A hush fell, the entire courtyard leaning into her words. She felt the moon above her, steady and eternal, as if it too listened. Cole rose beside her, taking her hands in his.
The moon chose well.
He said quietly but firmly, a vow wrapped in simple truth.
You were meant to be our light.
The pack erupted again, howls and cheers folding together until the night sky seemed to sing. Madison met Cole's eyes and felt the long arc of her journey settle inside her. The lonely back room, the cold forest streams, the first quiet evenings beside a stranger who would become her mate. Every step had led to this life of love and leadership. Later, when the feast quieted and the fires burned low, she and Cole slipped to the garden planted with the seeds he had once brought to her clearing. The first shoots were already breaking through the dark soil, green and certain. Cole touched a budding leaf and smiled.
This is how legacies begin.
He said.
One seed, one choice, growing until it becomes a forest of its own.
Madison laid her hand over his. The cool earth beneath them felt alive with promise.
Then let ours be a legacy of light,
She whispered.
so that no child ever again believes they must hide.
The moon climbed higher, bathing the garden in silver. In that quiet, Madison knew her story had grown beyond survival. It had become a living testament, proof that no curse endures, that love and courage will always outlast the darkest night. Final chapter: The Forest and the Crown. Years passed, and Blackridge flourished under the calm strength of its Alpha and Luna. Trade routes opened through the mountain passes, harvests grew richer, and neighboring packs sought counsel from the woman who had once been hidden away. Madison's name became a quiet legend, spoken not in fear, but as a blessing, the Luna who turned exile into destiny. Every season carried its own reminder of the journey. Spring brought wildflowers like those that lined her first forest clearing. Summer filled the keep with the hum of children's laughter and ripening fruit. Autumn painted the hills in the same deep gold she had once watched alone from a small back window. And winter's hush still whispered of the nights when she built fires from fallen branches, believing no one would ever find her. Madison often returned to the forest with Cole, sometimes alone, sometimes with the pack. They bathed in the brook that had been her first lifeline, walked the deer paths that had shaped her courage, and planted seeds where her cabin once stood. What was once a place of exile had become sacred ground, a living chapter of their story. Her family remained distant, their jealousy and bitterness fading into the quiet of forgotten years. From time to time, news of their small lives reached her: a cousin's wedding, a harvest lost to drought. But those old shadows no longer carried weight. The council and pack had long ago embraced the truth that evil never lasts forever. Cole remained her steadfast partner, his leadership deepened by the gentleness he learned at her side. Their union was not merely of titles, but of equals who had chosen each other despite every obstacle. Together they raised children who climbed the battlements and ran laughing through the very halls where the word cursed had once echoed. The keep became a place of music and wisdom, shaped as much by Madison's quiet strength as by Cole's commanding voice. On a clear night many winters later, Madison stood on the highest tower beneath the silvered moon. Below her, the keep glowed with warm fires and the steady heartbeat of a thriving pack. She thought of the girl in the back room, of the long walk into the woods, of every cold morning and lonely meal that had once felt like an ending. Each of those moments, she now knew, had been a step toward this life, toward love, leadership, and peace. Cole joined her, wrapping a cloak around her shoulders.
The forest still calls you,
He said softly.
It always will.
Madison answered, her voice serene.
It saved me. It prepared me, and it led me home.
They stood together in the moonlight, the quiet night holding them like a vow. The journey that began with fear and solitude had become a legacy of strength and belonging, a living proof that destiny cannot be buried and that love endures every shadow. Far below, the pack's evening howl rose and drifted over the valley, a song of loyalty and triumph. Madison closed her eyes and let the sound carry her back to every step of the path that had shaped her life. She had walked from silence to sovereignty, from exile to everlasting light. The girl who was once hidden was gone. In her place stood a Luna, a queen in spirit and name, whose story would guide generations yet unborn. And in the soft silver glow of the moon, Madison finally knew, with unshakable certainty, evil never lasts forever. Love, truth, and courage always find their way home. The forest and the crown were one, and her heart, at last, was whole.